Hi guys, hope you all doing well. Welcome back to our channel. From this particular video, we are going to get started with threat detection in Microsoft Sentinel. And I'm going to talk about the ways in which you implement threat detection. And fundamentally, the option in Microsoft Sentinel is termed as analytical rules. And the rule type that I'm going to talk about is scheduled query rule. So if you're watching the series from the beginning, I hope now the data ingestion part is exceptionally sorted, which means you know all the different methods in which data ingestion can happen, starting from Windows to Linux to data ingestion from routers such as firewall proxies, cloud connectors, as well as custom data ingestion. But now the question really is that what's next? What should I do next to make sure that I can derive some value from this data that I'm capturing? So the very first fundamental which we have to understand, and if you guys remember, this was the deck that I have used in my scene playlist where I was talking about the architecture in terms of how the data is saved in a SIEM solution. And moreover, Microsoft Sentinel uses dedicated schema architecture. Now, what exactly this dedicated schema architecture is all about? So when it comes to log analytics workspace, as we know, whenever you ingest a log, there is a dedicated table in which that log will be ingested. So likewise for Windows, you have security events. For Linux, you have syslog. For firewalls or routers or switches, majority of the data ingestion will happen in CEF table, which is common security log table. And then you can have your own custom table for data ingestion, which is, let's say, for JSON format or any custom formatted data. But the question is that how exactly we are going to perform the analytics. Okay, what's next? The answer to what's next is you have to create analytical rule which can detect a pattern which is predefined. Now, when I say predefined, what exactly I mean by this, that assume you want to detect a brute force attempt or let's say failed logon attempts on a Windows machine. Okay, then the first aspect that you have to keep in mind is if this kind of activity happens on a Windows machine, that what kind of logs are getting generated. Now, this is a very naive example, but my intent here is to make you understand how exactly the analogy works behind defining rules. Okay, so whenever someone tries to sign in into Windows and it fails for some reason, then there is an event ID which is generated, or practically speaking, an event is generated with the event ID 4625. That's what you already know. But now the catch is that you want to detect if there are 5 failed logon attempts in less than a minute, then there has to be an alert, and that alert should be mapped to an incident so that your SOC analyst can go ahead and review what's exactly happening on that particular device. Okay. So now to begin with, let's understand how exactly the analytical rules are created, from where all this predefined rule templates are getting displayed if I'll navigate to my analytical rule section. Okay. So as of now, I have signed into portal.azure.com and I'm inside my Sentinel console and I have clicked on this option which says analytics. Now, as you can see, it is showing me 2 different rules as active because I have actually activated one of them. However, this one which says advanced multi-stage attack detection is something which is created by default for each and every instance of Sentinel. Now I'll come to this in a lot more detail later, but as of now, let me get started with basic concepts first. Okay. So by default, let's say if I click on rule template, it shows me n number of different rules which are getting listed over here. But the question is how exactly these rules got created, or it is available to me in my Sentinel instance as a template. So if you guys remember, when I was talking about data connectors, when I was talking about the process of onboarding data connector, then I have specifically explained that whenever you onboard any data connector, there is a predefined configuration that comes with that data connector, which includes rule templates. Okay. Now, this count that you see over here, which says 46 analytical rule template, when I installed this data connector, then there are 46 different rules which got onboarded into my Sentinel instance. The same concept also applies for Windows. So let's say if I go ahead and click on this option of data connectors, and if I'll scroll down and say security events via AMA, which is this one, Windows security events via AMA, you can see it shows me around 23 different rules which also got onboarded. So the question is, if you want to view these rules which are already predefined, you can just click on this option of analytics and then click on the option which says rule template. Now, depending upon the data source, you can just go ahead and apply a filter here, and I'm going to choose data source, and here I'm going to type Windows, and it will show me that from which specific source you want to see the rules. So let's say if I select this option which says Windows security events via AMA, and I'll click on apply, you can see it is showing me there are around 23 different rules which exist. So when it comes to default set of security configuration, you will get ample amount of data pre-populated. You don't have to invest a lot of time in deciding a specific use case, because these are all very generic use case which are already available. However, this being said, every environment is different. You may be having some specific requirements which you want to achieve, likewise the one which I have discussed in the deck. So I'm going to show you how exactly you are going to achieve it. Okay. So the very first thing that I would like to show you guys, and that is the type of rules which are available. So fundamentally, whenever you go ahead and create a rule from Sentinel console, these are the three set of options which are available by default. However, there are three more, and as we move along in this playlist, I'll show you how to create those as well. So as of now, our focus is to understand this option which says scheduled query rule. Okay. And I'll get started with the same concept which we have discussed in our deck. So I'm going to click on create, and then I'm going to click on scheduled query rule. Now, as you can see, this is the first section which is asking me for the rule name. Okay. So I'll type my rule name, which is, let's say, more than 5 failed login attempts in less than a minute for a Windows machine. And I'll copy the same and I'll keep it in the description as well. Now here I can choose the severity, which basically means that when an alert is generated and the respective incident is also generated, what severity you want. So I'll choose it as high. Now, if you guys know what attack framework is, absolutely great. However, there is a dedicated playlist which will be posted very soon, which explains all the concept behind this attack framework. So as of now, let's say if somebody is trying to compromise and randomly guess password or just brute force into a specific machine, it comes under the category of credential access. So I'm just going to select this particular option which says tactic 110-brute force. Okay. Now, what does this basically do? That whenever there is any incident getting generated, it will map this technique into that incident as well, so that once you go ahead and review the entire attack framework, you'll come to know what's exactly is happening in your environment. Again, so as we move along, these things will become exceptionally easy. Don't worry. As of now, I have just given a kind of a name. I have selected the severity, and then I have selected the attack framework technique. And obviously the status has to be enabled. Now I'm going to click on next option, which says set rule logic. Now, this is the most important part, because this is where you're going to perform all the analysis. Okay. And before I go there, let me open my log analytics workspace and get started in explaining how exactly the data analysis is going to work. Even though I'm choosing a very naive example, but I'll make sure that I'll show you n number of different things which will help you with your requirement. Okay. So the very first thing that we have to do is we have to go ahead and query this table, which is security event. This will let me know or this will pull the data of all the security events getting captured from all the machines. Okay. Now here, since we know the event ID is 4625, so I will say where event ID is 4625, and then I'm going to click on run. Now it is again showing me some of the results, but understand this, that practically speaking, you don't need all this data because you already know the use case, correct? So it's not required for you to query everything. So in this case, let's see what all is required. So I'm going to say that project, let's say I want to know the account. Okay. I also want to know what is the computer name. Okay. Then let's say I want to know the next thing, which is event ID, the most important one, right? Then I also want to know the address, if there is any, which is available. Let's just see. Okay, it's not showing me any address. Let's say I choose target domain name. It's not showing any domain because this is a workgroup machine. Okay. And I'll again just keep on scrolling right to see if there is anything which is required for me in terms of, let's say, making sure that information is available to my SOC analyst. Now, one more very important aspect that I want you all to know, that whatever information you will select here, that is the set of information that can be populated in entities as well. Okay. So as of now, I have selected account, computer, event ID, target domain name, process name, and I'll click on run. Let's choose one more, which is workstation name. So yeah, this is the result that I'm getting, and I can see that there are two different sections which are showing same information. So let's just remove computer. Okay, so now I can see all the data. Now I'm not getting time generated, so let's add time generated as well, and let's query slightly older data as well. So yeah, now you can see I'm getting this data, but the concern here is that I want to know that how many activities happened for a specific machine, and I also want to check that whether the count is beyond 5 in less than a minute. Okay, so now for all obvious reasons, you need to know KQL for this, and I'll try to create a playlist for that as well. However, as of now, just understand how exactly this entire workflow is happening. Okay, so I'm going to say summarize count by, let's say, show me the account name, show me the workstation name, show me the process as well, so that the process is same. Okay, now what you have to do is you have to you have to combine the values and go ahead and check for time generated and do a match, or let's say club the entries for 1 minute, or let's say 5 minutes. Let me show you this for 5 minutes once, and then things will make a lot more sense. Okay, so now I'm going to run this, but before I run this, I'll just make a small change so that time generated comes first. Okay, so I'll just here type time generated comma. Okay, and now I'm going to run this. Now let's see what all results we get. So yeah, you can see now it is showing me results depending upon the event types which were generated. Okay, and as you can see, this has also been clubbed. Now what this basically means, that in 5 minutes on this particular machine, there was a failed login attempt. Okay, so let's also present event ID. Event ID is here. Perfect. I'll click on run. Perfect. So now you can see for the very first entry around 10:30 a.m. in the window of 5 minutes, there were around 9 failed attempts. Okay. Now let me do it for 1 minute and then we'll see. So yeah, there were many instances where I was trying to reproduce a specific scenario so that I can show you folks. I was making this log available. That's why we are getting this entry. Now see, we have written this query, and as of now, it's only showing me one single machine. but there could be a probability that there could be multiple machines where this scenario is happening. Now, let's say I want to know the scenarios wherein the count should be more than 5 or equal to 5. Let's say greater than or equal to 5. So then here, lastly, I will say where the count is greater than or equal to 5. Now, practically, it should show me 1, 2, 3, 4 entries. And let's see. Perfect. So you can see now I'm getting these 4 entries. So now what I have to do is I have to copy this query as it is, and I have to come back to my analytical rule section and paste this query here. Okay. Now this is something which is going to check, this console itself is going to check whether the query is valid or not. So if you have not provided a valid query, then you will get error here itself. Now let's say you have written the proper query, then you can click on this option which says test with current data, and it will also show you if there is any active number of events. So you can see it is showing me that there are certain time frames where this particular pattern was detected. Now, for all obvious reasons, if you are getting started, it will be slightly hard for you to reach a perfect rule type on your first go itself. But nevertheless, I mean, as you move along, as you practice this query more, you'll come to know how exactly things are working. Okay. Now the next section is entity mapping. And this is the most important section because whatever you are going to choose here will be shown to your SOC analyst. So here you are basically planning a very good experience for your SOC analyst itself. Okay. So let's say if I click on this option of add new entity. Now here I can say that I want to show the account on which this activity was detected. Okay. So here I have to choose an attribute. Let's say I'm saying name, and then here I'm giving the actual value, which is account. Now, one more aspect that you guys should look here, and that is I am only getting the set of columns which I have selected in this query. So you can see it is showing me time generated, account, event ID, target, domain name, process name, and workstation. And this is exactly what I'm getting over here. So let's say if you want to include some information to be shown in the entity itself, then you have to make sure that data is already available in the query. Okay. Let's map host as well. So for host, I'm going to say host name as my workstation name. And let's add process as well. Okay. So I'll scroll down and check for process. Here it is. Now, as you can see, it is showing you all the possible different type of entity type which can be mapped to incident. So depending upon your requirement, you can choose any one of these. In this particular use case, these 3 are the most applicable ones. So I'm just showing you this. And let's just choose process ID to show you the process name, or let's say I can say command line, or let's say I can choose any one of these. However, these two make slightly more sense. So I'm just choosing process ID for now to begin with. Now, if you want, you can have custom details added as well, where you have to define the key value pair. Okay. So let's say if I delete this from here, I can just go ahead and type process name. And from here, I can choose this value, which is process name. Now this value will be coming obviously from this particular data, and here it is just creating a custom key. Let me show you this method itself. So we'll cover both of them. Okay. Now the next aspect is the most important aspect, where you are going to define that what is the frequency of initiating this particular rule and querying data. Okay. So as of now, you can see it shows that run every 5 hours and look up for the data for last 5 hours. So in this case, the possibility of missing a specific time frame is not even possible, practically speaking, because every 5 hours, this rule will be triggered and it is going to query the data which has been generated in last 5 hours. For this particular demo, I'll just make it very small so that I can show you the incident creation quickly. So, okay, so the lowest value is 5 and look for 5 minutes of data. That's exactly what I'm going to do. So as of now, what this rule is doing, it is going to run this particular query that we have defined. It is going to query the data for last 5 minutes. and it will run every 5 minutes. And I have started this rule automatically the moment it is created. Okay. Now you can see generate an alert when the number of query result is greater than 0. Now this is something which gets applied to my use case. However, there are three more options that you can choose from here, where it says is equal to, or is fewer than, or is not equal to. So let's say if I run this particular query, and even if I'm getting one single result, that means that there is a machine where there is a failed attempt which is beyond 5 in less than a minute. Okay. Now I'll scroll down this and I'll not make any change. And here it says that group all the events into a single alert or trigger an alert for each event. Now, the purpose of Sentinel is to reduce alert fatigue. I mean, for the same scenario, there should not be n number of different alerts. So if it'll group for you, that will be easy for you. Okay. So I'm going to choose this first option itself. Now, one more aspect that I would like to bring in here, that the requirement can be anything. Let's say for your particular scenario that you're trying to configure, if you need an alert for each and every event which is happening, then for sure you can choose this particular option. And now I'm not going to define any suppression rules, and I'm just going to click on next, which is incident setting. Now see, the first aspect which we were configuring here was to generate an alert, and obviously in SIEM world, precisely speaking, the alerts get mapped to incidents. So I'll choose this option which says create incidents from alerts triggered by this analytical rule. Now there could be multiple alerts. So for all obvious reasons, you get this option as well, which says group alerts. Okay. And you can read this section here, which says up to 150 alerts can be grouped into a single incident. If more than 150 alerts are generated, a new incident will be created with the same incident detail as the original, and the access alerts will be grouped into the new incidents. Very simple English, exceptionally relatable. Okay. Now here I can choose that for which time frame the alert mapping should be done. So let's say I'm saying that keep it 5 hours. So which means that if around 7 p.m. today this rule gets triggered, then you can add 5 more hours till let's say 12 a.m. Then anything which is happening in that particular scenario will be mapped to this particular incident, provided the count does not go beyond 150. Okay. So you can see grouping alerts into a single incident if all entities matched. This is the option that I have selected. Grouping all the alerts triggered by this rule into a single incident. Now, this is again something which is not recommended. It's visible here because there could be a possibility that all the alerts are having different entities altogether. So let's choose this option itself. And then there is one more which says group alerts into single incident if selected entity type gets matched. So if I'll click on this, it will choose me, or it will give me the option to choose that which entity type you want to be in common. So I'll not make any change here, and I'll just click on this option, and that's it. Now I'm not going to make any change here as well, and then I'm going to click on next. So as of now, we have not discussed about automation rules, so I'm not going to cover anything here, but this is something which is also very simple. As we move along with the playlist, I'll tell you the purpose of automation rules. Now I'm going to click on next, which says review and create, and it is going to check and validate if all the options that you have selected are as expected by the template itself or not. So if there is anything that you have missed, it will give you an error. Okay. Or it will not allow you to create this particular rule. So as of now, I'll just click on save. So what has actually happened, that there is a rule which is now going to run every 5 minutes, and it will alert, or it will create an incident if there is any predefined pattern which is matched. And what exactly that predefined pattern is, to go ahead and check if there are more than 5 failed login attempts in less than a minute. So now what I'll do is I'll switch to my machine where I will try executing this scenario. Okay. So this is my machine, and if I'll show you the host name, you can see this is the one. And from the same machine, the data collection is also happening. So if I'll come back to my Sentinel console again and show you the host name here, you can see this is the workstation name and it is same to what I was showing you on my machine, which is this one. Okay, so now if I go ahead and try to initiate failed sign-in attempts, let's say 5 times in less than a minute, then the expected behavior is we should get an incident triggered in my Sentinel console. Okay, so now here I'm just going to click on this option of security and I'm going to apply a filter as well so that I should only show you those logs which we have discussed, which is 4625. So you can see there are already so many attempts which are available over here, wherein I tried to see if everything is working in place or not. Okay, so as of now it's around 6:59 p.m. and you can see it's around 20 seconds already passed. Just to be exceptionally intentional with this particular rule and with this particular showcase, what I'll do is I'll wait for 30 seconds more, and then as soon as it is 7 p.m. then I'll go ahead and initiate the bad password attempts. Okay, so I'll open on-screen keyboard so that I can lock my machine. Okay, it's only 13 seconds left, and as soon as I lock my machine, try bad password attempt for, let's say, more than 5 times. We'll wait and see that whether the alert is getting generated or not. Perfect. So now we can get started, and let me try 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have tried bad password attempt for 6 times, and once we go back and check the logs in the event viewer, it will also show me the entries of 6 failed attempts. And then from this particular machine, that data will flow to your log analytics workspace as it is. And the moment rule evaluates this condition and founds a match which is beyond 1, or let's say beyond 0, and then it will trigger a specific incident. Okay, so I tried once more just to make sure that the incident gets generated. Perfect. So now let's log in here. Okay, and close this and refresh it. Now you can see I'm getting all the different events here. Okay, starting from 7 p.m. around 6 seconds, I'm getting how many? 7 different events. Okay, now what I'll do is I'll come back to my portal. Okay, and here I'm going to say where time generated should not be more than 10 minutes ago. Okay, just to make sure we get the results. So we'll wait, and you can see it's now here. It's happening exceptionally fast. So you can see it is showing me a result which says around 7 p.m. during 1 minute itself. You can see the count is around 7. The same scenario which I was showing you on the machine itself. Okay, now let's just see that how long it takes for an incident to be generated. So as of now, if I come back to my machine, it's around 7:02. I'm expecting that we should get an incident around 7:05 or somewhere between 7:05 to 7:10. So I'll pause the video and I'll resume the moment I'll see the incident. Perfect. So as you can see, it's around 7:08. And now if I come back to my portal, you can see there is an alert which has been generated. Okay, so you can see it shows me the last updated time, creation time as well. So it took around 7 minutes precisely for this to get generated. Now there are all obvious reasons behind that as well, that even though you have defined 5 minutes, it takes around 2-3 minutes for processing itself. However, within the predefined timelines, we are getting the incident available here. Okay, now if I'll click on view full details, it will show me the end-to-end details which have been captured, and you can see it shows me the account, it shows me the host. However, it does not show me the custom process name part which we were discussing, because it shows here. So again, this is something which I wanted to show you guys intentionally, and that is when you define a custom entity. Okay, so let me go back to my Sentinel console and show you the rule once again. So I'll go to analytics, and then here I'm going to open this one, and I'm going to show you the entity mapping. Okay, it's not showing me the option available over here. Let me just zoom out slightly, edit, and then zoom in again. If I'll go to this option of set rule logic, you can see it shows custom details and it shows me process name here. Now this information will be available in this particular section, which is kind of overview of the incident, not here in the entity mapping itself. If you want any information to be shown here directly, then you have to choose it from here. Sorry, not from here, from the entity mapping section itself, which is this one. Okay, so a quick summary. The first step is to go ahead and click on this option which says scheduled query rule. Then you have to go ahead and perform or give all the details which you want to be available. Then once you have given this, make sure you do the entity mapping based on the query that you have written. So the first section will give you the option to type the query. Then you can click on this option which says view query results, and then you can also test your query with the current set of data. The next step is to go ahead and define the process part, which is here. Now again, this is something which I have clearly shown, but just a quick recap, that the set of options which will be available for you on entity mapping will be the options that are derived by the columns that you have selected. So here account is selected in the query, that's why I can choose account. Similarly, workstation name, similarly process name. Now in our scenario, I've shown you the custom part. However, if you do this with the default entity mapping section, you'll get the process name listed in the entity section. Once you have done this, the next part is to go ahead and define the frequency, as in when the rule should be triggered. In this case, it is 30 minutes, and then go ahead and query the data for last 30 minutes. But to showcase, I have shown you a very small time period, which is 5 minutes. Okay. Now the next section is to go ahead and create a condition that when exactly the alert should be generated when the outcome of my query is beyond 0 or greater than 0, and then group all the events into one single incident. Lastly, if you want, you can create the option of alert grouping again, depending upon the entity set which is available. And again, the same set of information, that around 150 alerts can be mapped to a specific incident. Perfect. So this was all about knowing how the scheduled query rule works. In the next video, I'm going to showcase how near real-time rule works, which is the second rule type. So if you think that this channel is helping you to learn anything new, please feel free to subscribe and share this video with your technical community. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time.